Hello and welcome to ACT Prep. I'm your English teacher, Miss Bear. We have been working on ways that you can improve your score on the ACT English test. And today we are in our final day of looking at the skills that you need to be successful on this ACT English test. We've looked at the conventions of standard English. We have looked at the production of writing. Today, we're going to look at knowledge of language. How well do you know the language that you work within? And so this particular skill requires you to demonstrate effective use of language through precision and concision in word choice. It looks at making sure that you can maintain your style and tone. It does have two subcategories or sections, and they are expressing ideas clearly and then looking at style. So let's look first at expressing ideas clearly. That particular item has two different learning targets. You have ensure precision of language via logical word choice and logical connectors. And then you also have ensure concision of language by eliminating wordiness and redundancy. And today we are going to look at both of those learning targets and look at all of the different, not all of the different, but we're going to look at a sampling of those items and what they will look like on the practice test that you guys took a couple of weeks ago. So the first item is ensure precision of language via logical word choice or logical connectors. And you have several items. You can see items 3, 21, 34, 52, 53, and 61. Today, we're only going to look at items 3 and 61, and that will kind of give us an idea of a better idea of what these are going to look like. If you need additional practice, do go back to some of those other items. And also practice on your Grammar Monster or your Khan Academy or that No Red Ink. That can help you with that word concision and precision. All right, so let's look at item number 3. 5 years later, she invited a violin that clones as an audio tape player. Well, typically when we think of the word clone, we think about something that has been copied, or we think about a scientific idea. So the best precision of language item here would be that it doubles. It doubles as both an audio tape player and a violin. So it does both. And so the word clone is not the most effective word choice here, but also it doesn't copy, because a copy isn't really the best word choice. Now, all three of these words can be synonyms of the word clones, but they're not the best choice. And so I think I told you guys that in my classroom we do a lot of Freyer models that have synonyms and antonyms in them. And if you want to know what a Freyer model looks like, you put your word here. So we would put the word clone, and then you would have the dictionary definition, and then you would have synonyms and antonyms, and I can't remember what this last corner was, but typically it's whatever your teacher decides. So all of these words would fit under synonyms for the word clone, but each of those words has a different connotation as well. And so we have to look at what all of that looks like and that best answer choice, okay? And so the best answer choice for number 3 for the most precise word is the word doubles, okay? So now let's look at number 61. For decades, the diminutive jellyfish, TD, mere millimeters wide as an adult, did not unveil much notice from scientists. So to unveil, typically you think about a veil of is usually something a bride wears, right? When she is unveiled, that veil comes up and reveals her face. And so, again, you have the word reveal over here. You also have it discloses her face, but the word disclose has a different connotation than the word reveal. But the most precise word for this particular sentence is the word elicit. So this is going to test your vocabulary knowledge and how well you know and how well that you can pick the most precise word for what the sentence is expecting you to put. Those vocabulary terms are going to be things that are going to be difficult for you just to get a list of words and study, because it doesn't work that way. Your brain does not absorb vocabulary in that way. The best way that you can get the most bang for your buck in vocabulary is to read. Read deep and read wide. Read lots of different topics and about lots of different topics, and read a lot for that particular topic. Remember we talked about those magazines at the beginning when we were talking about, you know, just digging into the reading? Read through some of those scientific magazines, some of those artistic magazines. You will get the vocabulary that you need, as long as when you get to something and you're like, I'm not sure what that word means, you look that word up if you can't determine what it means through the context of the passage that it's in. But read. The best way that you can get all of your vocabulary is to read. All right, let's look at the next learning target. Is going to be ensure concision of language by eliminating wordiness and redundancy. So the Stripe Spotter, number 26, says, Stripe Spotter has proved so useful that its developers plan to design similar programs for identifying other animals. Well, let's look at how to avoid redundancy. So we look at your other items. Well, we've added, though these programs have not yet been created. Well, we know that they haven't been created because it says they plan to design. Right? So we know it's not going to be that one. It's too wordy. It's got way too many words, and we've already said that. H is animals through a comparable means. Well, we've already said here the word similar, so we know it's not that. And J, animals that are not zebras. Well, duh. Sorry. But obviously it says other animals, and we have been talking about zebras. So it's not going to be J. So just the word animals works fine there. We have been very concise with our choice, and we have not added extra things that we don't need to add. Sometimes when you guys write essays and there's a certain word count that you have to reach, you end up putting all kinds of stuff in there, and you're like, you know, that you would probably put, though these programs have not been created. But that is redundant. It has already been said in the sentence before. So don't just add words to add words. Make sure that you're precise and concise with your word choices. All right, now let's look at the next sub-skill for knowledge of language, and that's style. Style has two different learning targets: maintain consistency in style and tone, and then use effective and appropriate stylistic effects. And so we are going to look at both of those. And so when we get through with that, guys, we're going to be done with this ACT test, practice test that you guys took. We're not going to be looking at it anymore. You probably don't want to look at it anymore. But this particular first skill or first learning target is to maintain style and tone. And there are only two items, items 6 and 55. And let's look at number 55. Young had his soldiers place fences around the most damaged trees to protect them from future bad stuff. Oh, bless it. That's what we say when somebody does something, you're like, oh, bless their hearts. Y'all know what that means. And so does that maintain the same tone as the rest of the essay? No, it does not, because the word stuff and bad are just, They're the worst words that you could choose of all of that. And it's not formal in any way, shape, or form. It might be a way that you would respond to one of your friends about something that they're trying to get you to do, and you'd be like, ooh, that's bad stuff, I ain't touching that. And so that maintains the style that you're comfortable with in your everyday language. But in an essay, let's look at the best way to maintain the style and tone, kind of that formal tone of this essay. And so our choices are further harm in the future. Well, further and future basically are stating some of the same thing, because you know if it's further harm in the future, it's additional harm in the future. So that's going to be too redundant. So you look at future further harm. That could be good. Well, we already know bad stuff isn't going to be your best answer. So C. So the most damaged trees to protect them from further harm. Okay? We got that one? I think you guys can do that style and tone one pretty well. Now let's look at using appropriate stylistic effects. Sometimes these writers will change up the way and play with a word choice or the way that they put a sentence together. And good writers can manipulate sentences to make you slow down or speed up. And that's what a stylistic effect does. Let's look at number 28 is the only one on the test that you took that hits this learning target. So let's look at it. Any pattern that stays relatively constant over an animal's life could be translated into an identification code. Spots on a leopard's hide, the wrinkled trunk of an elephant, or rings on a tortoise's shell. And the question stem says, which choice is most consistent with the word pattern used in the other two examples in this sentence? So it's looking at this identification code. And so it says spots on a leopard's hide, and I'm going to skip the underline part, rings on a tortoise's shell. So you have spots and rings. So this would be wrinkles if we're trying to maintain that. The wrinkles on an elephant's trunk. All right, so where is that? Wrinkles on an elephant's trunk. It tells you where to go. It says which choice is most consistent with the other two examples. So you need to look at those other two examples so that you see how are those written, and then I want to write this one in that same style, okay? So that's all. We are finished looking at this practice test. When we come back the next time, we're going to be looking at what I'm calling Unit 2. And Unit 2 is going to give you a little bit more practice, but it's going to dig into some of those nuances so that you can really soar from a basic score on your English portion of your ACT, and you can get the absolute highest score possible, and it's going to be more targeted. So you can go in and you can say, I need practice on this particular learning target, or I need practice with this particular skill. You can go to those videos specifically and watch those and see how I work through those with you. So until next time, happy learning.